Day.
And I'm Richard Day.
We're both chiropractors.
We've been in practice together for 11 years.
Married for 10.
With 3 beautiful little girls.
We know it's possible to have an exceptional practice that's built around your life.
Because we've done it.
So we've created this podcast,
the Lifestyle Practice Builders Podcast.
We'll interview chiropractors, answer questions, and bring you resources to help build and grow your practice.
So let's get this party started.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Lifestyle Practice Builders Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Haley Day. I recorded today's episode back in March, right before all of this COVID silliness started. My guest, Crystal Misenheimer, is the co-founder of Progressive Practice Sales. Their team offers smart, modern solutions to help chiropractors sell and acquire clinics, saving them time, money, and effort along the way. She can be contacted at crystal@progressivepracticesales.com, and we'll have other contact information for her on our website. Crystal has an abundance of knowledge when it comes to buying and selling practices, but she also knows what it takes to build one, which makes her and her husband an incredible resource for anyone looking to buy a practice. They built 3 practices and sold them before starting Progressive Practice Sales. And on today's episode, she answers all of my questions and then some. Let's listen. Hi, Crystal. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Haley. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, I'm really excited to have you on. We get a lot of emails for people who want to be on the podcast, and I honestly have not had, I think you're only the second one that I've been interested in having on. I think this is going to be a great topic for our listeners, and I did some background checks and saw that people really enjoy what you guys do, and they like working with you. I'm glad to have you on and share your story.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
So can you tell us a little bit about you and your husband and service that you provide?
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband, Kevin, and I are the co-founders of Progressive Practice Sales, and we're the #1 brokerage firm in the chiropractic clinic marketplace. And our background is in chiropractic. We're a chiropractic family, although my husband doesn't practice anymore. We owned 3 of our own clinics over a 15-year period. Owner operated all of them. He did the patient care. I managed the clinics, and we sold each one of them. We were just, rather nomadic and like to move around and do new things. And what we learned over that experience is that, the clinic sales process, it was just so passive and so outdated. And it didn't feel like it was really supporting us and definitely not supporting our buyers. And we just saw this huge opportunity to come in and better serve the chiropractors that, had devoted their lives to these practices. And then, were kind of left in the cold when it came time to transfer ownership. And so we've been established for 5 years now. We're the fastest growing brokerage in the industry. We currently represent about 150 clinics, which comes to about $25 million of assets all across the US. And so that's who we are.
Wow. So most of our listeners are students or associates looking to kind of branch out and do their own thing. And I'm wondering what you are looking for in someone that is looking to purchase a practice. What kind of qualities do they need, or money do they need, that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So, we're looking for what we know our selling clients are looking for. And so our selling clients are #1, they're concerned about their patients. They want their patients to really like the new doctor because they want the legacy that they've built up to carry on. And so I would say that one of the really important things that your audience can work on while they're in school or in an associateship is just building up really strong communication skills. That's key because, school's going to get you pretty far clinically, and then you're going to be able to perfect your technique and do really well there. But communication skills are something that a lot of people overlook, and they're critical for success, and also for connecting with a selling doctor. And our clients also definitely want to know that a buyer is serious. And so in order to be considered a serious buyer, you would need to get pre-qualified with a broker. So to qualify for pre-qualification, you're generally going to need to have a credit score above 680. And you're going to need to have down payment funds that you can provide proof of about 12% of the listing price for the practice. And the good news is that 12% can be completely gifted. So if you have a parent or, another relative or even a friend who wants to invest in your future, It has to be a gift. It can't be something that there's a formal obligation to pay back. But that's a way that a lot of our young doctors are able to move forward with an acquisition, is through the gifted funds.
Okay.
And then one other thing that I would say that a seller is really looking for in a buyer is they're looking for someone who is confident and able to take action, which can be really scary, for a young doctor who's coming in and thinking about making this big change. And, you can kind of be just like hedging your way through it, but that's really frustrating on the selling side. So I would say once you find a clinic that you feel like is a really good fit, sort of, just getting into that mind frame of feel the fear and do it anyways, and just be confident about moving forward.
And being fully committed to the process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I was talking to a student the other day, and I realized that when we moved away from our practice and brought an associate in, and it was very similar to having someone buy the practice, because you want someone who's a good fit, who's confident, the communication, like you mentioned. So if someone's been an associate in that position, they may have a lot of those qualities already.
Absolutely.
And what do you think are some of the advantages and disadvantages to buying a clinic versus starting on their own or starting from scratch?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So this is a great question. It's one I really love talking about, because not everyone can really see the big picture of the advantages when they're looking at the two different situations. So one of the biggest things is that you're really mitigating your risk in terms of the fact that this business has been proven. So most new businesses fail within the first 5 years. So if you can get a business that's been in a location for 7 years plus, like they're proven in this location with this demographic, with this staff, with these systems, they've sort of worked out all of the kinks. And so that is a huge advantage. You also have a lot of historical data in the CRM and the EHR softwares to run the office, as for giving you better, forecasting and better decision making as you move forward with different marketing campaigns or seasonal fluctuations and planning around those. There's also the fact that you really can focus on the things that you love and that you're really good at, which when you're starting a practice from scratch, you can't focus exclusively on those. You have to do everything. You have to order the files, and you have to plan the build out, and you have to interview people and come up with systems from scratch. And if you buy something that's already there, you can just say, well, my real passion is in, patient education. So I'm going to take all the systems that are already there and just lean on those. And then I'm going to build out this side of what I really love to do. And another great way that can play in is somebody who really likes a niche technique. So let's say you have just this huge passion for, pediatrics and pregnancy care. It's tough to build, a really successful large practice on that, because it's a limited marketplace. But if you can get a practice that is already making a professional income, providing, diversified family care, you can build sort of a practice within a practice. And so you can do what you love, but not have to struggle financially. And of course, you're saving money when you buy a practice that's already in existence, because you're not paying full price for anything. It's full of equipment. A lot of the practices that we sell have pretty new equipment. So it's kind of like buying a car. The second you drive it off the lot, it depreciates a good deal. Same for the equipment. Whereas when you buy from or build from scratch, a lot of times you're getting leases for completely new things and paying full price. So there's a lot of advantages. There's also, it's easier to get funding for an existing business than it is for a startup, which is huge. Some of the disadvantages that can come into play. Number one, biggest thing is buying a business is completely built on trust. You're looking at practice stats, you're looking at tax returns, you're looking at financial statements. You really, in businesses of the size that most people purchase for owner operated clinics, there's not really a great way to go in and vet that information at 100% level. You'd have to hire a forensic accountant. It could be $20,000 to have them go in and verify that the financials are indeed, perfectly represented. And I've never seen anyone do that, even in, $1 million clinic acquisitions. So you do have to have a level of trust. Things have to match up when you're looking at the practice data. You can't see things that, that are giving you red flags. Hey, this is inconsistent. This doesn't seem to be right. So that can be obviously a disadvantage. And then buying a practice, it's never going to be perfect. And that's something that I think people really have to understand is that it's very rare for someone to come into a marketplace, say, I want to be in this area and have this perfect, brand new, gorgeously appointed clinic that's making a great income and does exactly the technique you want to do, ready and waiting for you. And if it is there, which sometimes it is, it's definitely priced at a premium, so it's, you kind of have to look at it as, here are my options. Which one of these, has the things in place that are things that I don't really want to deal with setting up and will give me the opportunity to grow it in things that I really do care about and love.
Yeah, there's so many things I could touch on all of those things. But I think the perfection, I see that so much even with people starting up on their own, that this idea that my paperwork's perfect, my EHR is going to be perfect, my flow through my office is going to be perfect, my patient visits is going to be perfect, networking is going to be perfect. And I just think we just need to throw that out. I mean, for anything, nothing is perfect. Nothing, the idea that you could walk into a clinic and it's going to be perfect is silly because it's life and you are going to deal with whatever is going on.
Absolutely.
So what are some, would you say, core things that a buyer should look for in a practice that would be closer to perfect for them?
Well, I can't emphasize enough to look for a practice that has a growth opportunity in an area where you're strong. And this is for a lot of young buyers. It's kind of a no-brainer that they're going into looking at clinics of doctors who are retiring, and they have not done anything digitally. So there's not really a web presence. There's not really established online reviews or any kind of presence in paid online marketing or social media. So, if you enjoy that kind of thing and you can find a practice that hasn't been doing that at all and it's already making a professional income, you pretty much know that you're going to be able to come in and get a really great return on your investment, because that is the way that people want. That's where they want to find things, is online. So anywhere, and that goes into a lot of different directions, but anywhere you can find a practice that you already have strengths you can grow, that's really important. That being said, I would really caution your audience against looking at something that's too small. And we see this a lot with young doctors because, they're in a really tough place. Like I have so much empathy for our young buyers because they're coming out of school with this massive student debt and they're going into an environment for practicing that's challenging. There's reimbursements dropping, costs are rising, competition's high. You can mitigate those things depending on the location that you decide to set up in, for sure. But overall, it's a challenging environment. And I think a lot of young doctors, they think in order to be financially responsible, I should buy something small and then build it up, kind of a fixer-upper model. But what we really recommend is looking at something that's at the higher end of what you're able to afford. And the reason for that, and we have charts on this that are just mind-blowing, is the difference it makes in your financial future to start out at a clinic that's bringing in $150,000 net a year versus starting at one that's bringing in $50,000 a year. It's insane how much more money you'll make over the life of your practice, not to mention the stress that you will not have to deal with because, fixing up a clinic when you've never owned a clinic, that's tough. That's a really tough job. And it's not something that I would consider anyone should take lightly, but definitely not someone who doesn't have experience in those things. So I would say, obviously you don't want to be irresponsible and go outside of the budget that you can afford. But to get a clinic that's already making a professional income, it's life-changing. Another thing that I would say is really important for young buyers especially, but really all buyers, is looking for a clinic that's really systems-driven versus personality-driven. And it's some people have really big personalities. And if your energy is bigger than the sellers, then you're in a good place. But if you're coming in and all of the marketing and the whole practice is built around, Dr. Bob and his expertise and, his ability to go in and do these big talks and close them, if you're not that kind of like big in real life person, that's going to be a real challenge to take over. And then another thing that we talk about with our buyers that also seems kind of counterintuitive to a lot of them is that the riches are in the niches. So, you've got doctors who have worked in other clinics and they, it's their family care clinics. Maybe they have a little bit of PI mixed in, diversified. That's what they're comfortable with because that's what they've experienced. And, there's definitely a space for that. We've got a lot of clinics like that do really well, but you've got more competition there. And so, if you're open to other things, looking at clinics that have, that are focusing in neuropathy, or we've got some clinics that are doing Department of Transportation exams and bringing in, a huge side revenue stream from that. Or, there's some different clinics that are focusing on, laser treatments for allergy care and stuff. You don't have any competition for those things. And so that can make life a whole lot easier, when you're just starting out and getting into the idea of running a practice, to have a lower competitive environment around you.
Yeah. And I think jumping in, those are all great points. I think also making sure you stick with what the clinic's doing, or you're able to, because I see, especially when we would bring in associates, would want to kind of start changing things, and it just doesn't work out. It's successful for a reason, and maintaining those qualities of the practice is what is the soul of the practice. So.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head with that. And, I actually just did an interview with a buyer that he closed about 2 years ago, and he's just really done so well. And he came back and reconnected with us to look for a second location. And he was probably in the demographic that a lot of your audience is in. He had graduated. He had spent about 2 years as an associate, and then he purchased this practice. And, I asked him, what did he think were some of the keys to his success? And in our recommendations to him when he was buying, we said, don't change anything for 90 days. Just people don't like change. You're going to be enough change. Get in there, build relationships with the staff and with the patients, and don't change anything else. And so he took that a step further, and he said, I didn't change anything for a year. I just wanted to really learn and understand how the business was running. So I made sure I didn't fix anything that wasn't broken. And I thought that was just amazing. And, he's been super successful. And that's one of the big reasons he attributes that to.
Yeah. Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit how a clinic's value is determined?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of different factors that we take into account. I think we look at about 25 different factors when we're determining the value of a clinic. And when we determine a value, what we're looking at is the value in the current marketplace, right? So what are they selling for right now? And so we're looking at things like trends in new patients. We're looking at, obviously growth or decline in the clinic overall. We're looking at the location and the signage and the newness of the equipment, the aesthetics of the office. So we've got about 25 factors that we look at, but ultimately there is a range of value that you can really depend on chiropractic clinics to fall between. And so that is generally 1.3 to 1.5 times the seller's discretionary earnings. And that sounds like a big, scary term, but it basically just means the net income on the tax return plus the owner's salary plus the benefits that they get from working in the clinic. So, for example, there's, their travel and their meals and entertainment, all those are tax write-offs, but they're really profit for the owner. Mm-hmm. And so when you add all of that together, you have the seller's discretionary earnings. And, there's certain things that a bank will allow to be contributed towards that and certain things that aren't. And so it's a little bit more complicated than simple, but that's the straightforward. So those other factors, those determine where it would fall within that range of value. But when your audience is looking at different practices for sale, that's really what they should be considering, is that the practice pricing should fall somewhere between 1.3 to 1.5 times those discretionary earnings. And where you will find that they don't is often in clinics that are listed for sale by owner. And that's where values can get really wonky.
I bet.
Yeah.
So what are some red flags that the buyer should be aware of? And can I also ask, is that something you guys do before you take on a clinic, or do you take on a clinic that might have some red flags and show those to the buyers and let them know this is clinic, but you might want to be aware of these aspects?
Yeah. So one of our core values at our company is transparency, because, ultimately we're just the middleman here. We're helping a seller and a buyer both have a great outcome that's going to support the patients. And so, fully support everything being as transparent as possible. So what we do when we have a new client come on is we get a massive amount of information from them, because again, buying a business is based on trust. The buyer has to understand what it is they're purchasing. So we get all of this information on the practice history and the management and all of the details, all the financials, all the information on the owner benefits, which are typically called add backs because you're adding it back into the profit. We get detailed information on all of it. And then we run it through our proprietary process where we're actually comparing the data at 500 different intersecting data points. So, we can't make any promises on the information. We don't, officially vet it because we can't. But we are looking for anything that is going to be problematic in terms of a new owner taking it over. Because again, got to be transparent with that from the start. So, your audience is welcome to reach out to our company. We have an online non-disclosure agreement. Once they sign that, we can share information on any of the practices that we have listed on our website. And so they'll be able to see examples of what that looks like. So if there was an issue, let's say there was an issue with the board in the past or an insurance company, or there's a staff member that's not staying, or, any of those things, all of that's laid out in the prospectus from the beginning.
Okay.
So back to the red flag question. So that would be one thing that I would really caution. And we do buyer representation services for clinics that are not listed by us. And that's one of the biggest complaints that we get when buyers come to us is they're like, I got this stack of papers and I don't know what I'm looking at. This doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And so that's when we'll, as part of our services for them, we say, okay, seller, you're going to have to go through this process and provide all this information because it has to be clear. People have to understand what they're buying, or how could they ever move forward? So lack of transparency, that would be a huge red flag. If things feel like they're not matching up, or you feel like you don't understand what you're buying, that is, an abort mission. Take a step back. We have to figure this out before you move forward. I would also say that on those financials, again, add backs are very standard. They're pretty much everybody who owns a business is going to be having some kind of tax strategy in place to minimize their tax exposure. And some of that's definitely legitimate when you're looking at buying a business. But you also, there's limits to that. And when you get to financial statements that just have endless add backs and, it's in categories that you're thinking, wow, I feel like marketing is pretty important. Why are we adding back all the marketing? That's a huge red flag. So you've got to be careful on those financial statements that have been done with a heavy hand. And here, this is a huge thing for buyers to know, because I think most people don't know this. So most clinics, especially for buyers of your demographic, are going to be funded through SBA loans. And the SBA is a government-backed program. And it has a ton of regulations. And if you do or say anything that violates one of those regulations, you're automatically declined. So because of that reason, most buyers will have a loan broker that will help them to get the loan for the practice. And additionally, a lot of banks won't fund chiropractic loans, because there's some factors that just puts that outside of the wheelhouse of what they're able to lend on, because they have these certain ratios they have to meet with, the assets that'll collateralize the loan, and et cetera. So it's hard to find a bank that'll loan on chiropractic. And then it's a really tricky, complicated process. So people go to a loan broker. Well, the thing that your audience needs to know is loan brokers for business loans, completely unregulated. And so we have seen so many sharky loan brokers that, they charge big upfront fees and then they disappear. They pretend that they're working on the loan and nothing ever happens. Just horror stories. So we actually ended up starting our own loan brokerage arm of our company, just so we could better control that side of the process, just because it was just such a such a crazy wild, wild west scenario. So I would say when the time is right and you're looking for someone to help you to get that loan, which we definitely recommend because it's not like any other loan you've ever gotten. It's nothing like a mortgage or a student loan. It's just, it's that to the 10th degree. But make sure that when you are talking to loan brokers, that you're working with someone who has a great reputation in the community. I would definitely look, if it's someone who's unknown, definitely you're going to want to check in with, Better Business Bureau and stuff like that, because there really are some bad actors in that industry.
Good to know. I think it can be so overwhelming, and then to have something like that happen has got to be awful.
Exactly. It's really kind of a mess, but, we do it, and we've built up a great reputation, as you mentioned, amongst the chiropractic community. So even if a buyer is looking for something, they've identified a clinic we don't represent, we can help them with lending on that. And so then they, have a sort of a safe partner to help in that process. And then we also have some recommendations we can make for other loan brokers that we know are really good and solid and have been in the industry for a long time.
That's awesome. So helpful. So I get this question a lot, is that people want to know when they should start, if they're in school still, when should they start looking or starting this process?
Yeah, I would actually recommend that they get set up with looking right away. And, you want to be honest about your time frame so that the broker's not, trying to chase you down and, are you ready to go? Mm-hmm. But like I said, if you sign a non-disclosure with us, and I think this is probably true with any other broker as well, then we can share any kind of practice information with you. And one of the best, research methods that you can do in preparing for this is looking at a lot of information on practices. So, you can look at practices that are, top of the line, high end, everything. You can look at the bargain ones. You can look at different models and really just learn about the financials, start to learn about how they operate, how much staffing they need, what have the fluctuations been like in their area? I mean, there's just so much information. Like our prospectuses, they're generally 50 plus pages. So ton of information that, it's basically a master's degree in how to buy a business if you read enough of those. So that's a really good place to start while you're still in school. When it comes time to where you're actually ready to look for something, you're ready to make a move, what you should plan on is once you've signed a letter of intent, which is your initial non-binding offer to the seller to purchase their practice, through our services, it's about a 90-day timeline to close. I've heard from buyers that other brokers are quoting 6 to 9 months. I haven't confirmed that. But so that kind of gives you a range though of, a 3-month period to a 9-month period to actually be in the clinic. So, that would be a reasonable time frame.
Okay. And who pays for your services? And then also, do you recommend somebody has an attorney, or do you guys have all the paperwork and it's ready to go and all of those kind of boxes are checked?
Sure. Great question. So if you're looking to purchase one of the clinics that we represent, then the seller is exclusively paying for our services to sell the clinic. Okay. And we really focus on buyer education because we have a heart for the community. And we also know that, if you don't understand what you're looking at and you don't understand the process, you're never going to be able to move forward. So we invest a lot of time in our buyers as well. So if you're working with or if you're interested in buying one of our clinics, you kind of get thousands of dollars of services for free, which is how we like it. We want to be a resource for everybody. Mm-hmm. But there's also the opportunity to, bring in your own representation if you're looking at a clinic who's listed by another broker or listed for sale by owner. So in that situation, we're more than happy to provide buyer's assistance. And in that case, we would actually be able to negotiate on your behalf as well. Whereas if you're buying one of our clinics, obviously we're negotiating on behalf of our clients. I will say that the negotiation is probably only about 3% of the process because we do such a in-depth valuation. the clinics are really priced right for the current marketplace. And so there's usually not that much movement in the price. It's maybe like a 10% range on either side, because sometimes there will be multiple buyers. And so it'll go a little bit above asking price, but it's usually not like really moving the dial in terms of the negotiations. And then in terms of the documents, that's such a good question. So what we have is we have templates for the letter of intent. We have templates for the purchase and sale agreements. We had all of those created by an attorney. And then we close an average of 4 sales every month. So every month we've got 8 attorneys from, representing chiropractors looking at these contracts. So over the years, as you can imagine, they've really been fine-tuned and developed. And so really minimal adjustments are typically needed on the purchase agreements at this point. And they're typically, if you've got something unique in your situation or just to meet the state requirements, but all of the basic framework is there. And, we're really proud of the fact that our contracts are really balanced, and attorneys tell us that all the time. They're not really weighted towards the seller or the buyer. They really are looking to have an optimal outcome for both parties.
Awesome. I'm sure that helps a lot. I know we have done it ourselves twice or 3 times. And I think having those would be a lot more helpful, and having your help along the way too as well. So I'd like to go a little more general, since your husband is a chiropractor. You guys have been in and out of so many clinics. Can you give us an idea of what are some common traits of successful chiropractors?
Yeah, absolutely. I put a lot of thought into that. And I think one of the biggest things that we see in successful chiropractors is that their fear of failure doesn't stop them from taking action. And I mean, if you think about it, after graduation, everybody has the same fears. The most confident people are still terrified because they just took on all of this debt. There's so much that they don't know. And now they have to go out and, present themselves as a professional and take on life. And so a lot of people, I think, react to that fear by trying to be, what they would consider to be really financially responsible, and go, rent like a little room in a professional building that doesn't really have, signage or, walk by traffic or anything. Just try and minimize expenses so that they're not taking on additional debt or risk. But what we see from the successful doctors is they just push through that. And the way that they handle that fear is by taking action. And, that makes a big difference. Also, I would say that successful doctors realize that they're entrepreneurs. So, you definitely want to focus on the clinical side of things. Obviously, you have to be a great doctor in order to make it anywhere. But you have so many more things that you have to develop in terms of management and marketing. It's just not enough just to be clinically proficient, unfortunately. And I would also say, we talked earlier about communication skills, and I would say taking that even a step further to, developing yourself to really be able to do sales. Because even if you don't want to have like a super salesy model with, like a big upfront package or anything like that, you're going to be dealing with people, whether it's patients that you want to make changes in their lifestyle to help, support their care, or staff that you want to hire and maintain. All of that, life is sales. And so being able to sell and close people, that's a huge part of every successful doctor that we've worked with. And we've had some clients that have built up, $5 million practices over the course of their career. And these are just the things that you really see with them. And I'd also say that successful doctors consistently 100% of the time are always trying new things. So they're always trying new things to, diversify their revenue streams or new ways of bringing in new patients. They definitely subscribe to the, if you're not ripening, you're rotting philosophy.
Oh, I love all those, especially the diversification, because I can completely relate to that. And that's something that we've done. Also, I'm going to shamelessly plug, we have a report of findings course, and it's for people who don't want the salesy aspect of scripts and everything, but they want that confidence and the communication skills to talk to their patients and not over talk to them. We find that helps, and that's a process that we developed in practice and wanted to share with others that maybe don't join a practice management group or have those outlets. So
I love that. Yeah, that's fantastic.
So as I said earlier, a lot of new chiropractors are struggling with the idea of perfection. Could you tell us about one challenge that that you guys had in your process of opening and running clinics and the lessons you learned?
Yeah, absolutely. This is our fourth business that we've started from the ground up. And, we've had clinics in 3 different areas across the country. And the last one that we actually started it in, I think it was September of 2008. Timing could not have been worse, right in the middle of the economic meltdown.
That's when we graduated. I totally understand.
And, there is so much stress to starting a business from scratch. I mean, there's stress in buying a business as well. Nothing comes easy in life, but starting a practice from scratch is just excruciating because every time it's different. You don't know what's going to work. You have to test different things out and you're just hemorrhaging money, every day, spending so much. And, knowing what I know now, I would never go back and start any business from scratch again. There were just so many, sleepless nights and living off the working capital portion of your loan and just praying that the patients were going to start showing up. So there's been just so much stress. And in that, there's this huge fear that can present itself. And it's the fear of feeling like you need to know everything. And there's so much that you don't know. Mm-hmm. And I think that is, I think, the fear that comes from that strive for perfection. Like I should already have all of this knowledge. I should already be so good at this. And, no one will work with me if I'm not. And what I found was really the key to pushing through that. It's a 2-prong thing that worked for me. And so one of those is just the fact that in every business that we had, and this one for sure, it's just that drive to really, really want to help people, just really see people that are not being supported. And that's so true for chiropractors. There's that chiropractic heart of just wanting to help every person, right? So you've got that drive and that's what keeps you going. But the second part that I think is a little bit harder for people is having a commitment to yourself that you're going to be successful. And that can feel like it's selfish, but I think without that, it's really hard to push through that pain and that fear, So it's like, you've got to have work that has meaning to you, but you've also got to have that drive to put in that hard work because it's not going to be easy in the beginning. There's just so much challenge and it's like, you are going to have to employ that kind of fake it till you make it and feel the pain and do it anyways. And if you don't have that commitment to yourself, you are going to succeed and you're going to have this level of success that, you just feel like is not negotiable. It's hard. It's really hard to push through all of that pain.
I think that's awesome. I find myself telling students a lot of times that they have to have this confidence that they've already succeeded so many times, and to build, and that you're going to keep building on that, and that to take that confidence and appreciate what you've been through, what you've done, passing boards, graduating from school. Those are big things, and taking that forward and continuing that success. So wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you have a favorite book that you recommend?
So it would be really hard for me to call one book my favorite. I read a lot and love many, but I did just finish a book last month that I think is really a useful resource for pretty much anyone. And it's called Pitch Anything. It's by someone named Oren Clough. Okay. And he pitches big deals to investment firms and stuff. So at first I thought it was kind of not really applicable, but what's interesting about it is he talks a lot about frames in conversation. And so it tells you really specific advice of how to deal with difficult personality types when you're trying to get information across to them. And I think for chiropractors, like I can think of so many times in a report of findings and the person is just belligerent or not paying attention or trying to direct the conversation. Mm-hmm. And it has really specific advice on how to overcome those and get back in control of the conversation, just real specific techniques. So I would recommend that. I actually got it on an audiobook and I'd listened to it when I was driving to work. I think it was only 4 hours. So I'd recommend that to pretty much anybody. Yeah,
that sounds great. And you guys have started 4 businesses. You probably had several mentors. What's the best business advice you've received?
I think that I would say the best business advice is success comes from hard work, not a stroke of genius. And, I've lived by that for, probably the last 15 years, I mean, it's like, it's always, everything takes work. Anything that's worth anything takes work, from having a family to having a business. It's you got to put the effort in to get the result out, but that also makes the result that much sweeter.
Awesome. So I want to thank you so much for being on today. What is the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say really email is my primary method of communication. And so I think you're probably going to put that in your show notes. And then other than that, I'm also on LinkedIn and I'm relatively active there.
Okay. Go ahead and give us your email.
It's Crystal, Crystal, at progressivepracticesales.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. It's been really fun talking.
If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please share it with your friends on Instagram and Facebook. And for those of you who are already subscribers, we really appreciate it. Thanks for the reviews. We love reading those and knowing that you're loving the podcast. If you're looking for more tips and inspiration, be sure to check us out at lifestylepracticebuilders.com or join our business and marketing Facebook group for chiropractors at facebook.com/group/lifestylepractice.